JJ, we got Johnson. We got Johnson at 26. We got Johnson at 26. This is great.
It is Matt, it is Richie. We are hanging out with the Jets Lounge guys. Richie, my man, how's it going?
Matt, this is sick. We're at the Jets Lounge event in Farmingdale. The main event is what it's called. We got the entire Rutgers family over there.
Jets! Jets!
Good evening, everyone. Oldie but a goodie. Back in my days of still hanging out with the Jets Lounge. That's not in the Jets Lounge, but still hanging out with them. They actually got some exciting things coming within the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes on the Jets Lounge on Twitter. Keep your eyes on me on X, Twitter, whatever you want to say. I say Twitter. It's going to take me a long time to say X on X. It just doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel natural. Got a lot of people already in the comments. Some I don't even know if we're here. They just came in to yell and scream. Eric Craig, you've been with us forever. So what's going on, brother? Tony Alexio, the biggest Streveler fan in the world. It's good to see you. Our friend from across the pond, Phil Adams. What's going on, my brother? It's good to see you're still up. Jets Mess, my OG, my original. One of my first ever, first member, first everything, first snacker. It's good to see you here, buddy. And we got Mean Gene here, and we got Billy SBC here. So, hey, today we're going to be talking. You know what we're talking about today? We're really excited. You know, some people are still going to be very skeptical and anti-Jets. That we're not good, this, that, and then a lot of us are probably maybe overexcited and we're saying we're not going to lose again this year and we're going to win the Super Bowl and all that. But really, wins and losses is what matters the most. But if you want to kind of get an idea of how we're doing, sometimes you have to look beyond the record. You have to look beyond the 2-1, but look at what direction are we heading? What's working? What's going on based on who we're going to be playing in the future? Because there's still potential problems. Like one thing I'll point out is the penalties, over 100 yards in penalties, very punishing penalties that while you might get away with it when you're playing the New England Patriots, it might not go so well when you're playing the Buffalo Bills to get 100 yards in penalties. So, and then, way ahead, if we're thinking very optimistically in the playoffs, we're certainly not going to want to play teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and give them a free 100 yards in penalties. So there, right there is a thing that we do have to fix in spite of the fact we're 2-1. But if I tried to do this the whole time, it wouldn't last long. It probably wouldn't be complete, and it wouldn't be as good as my guest, who's going to really break it down for you. Everyone, please welcome the one and only, the man with all the facts, the calmness to my chaos, Frankie from Flatbush. What's going on, buddy?
Hello, Jeremy. Hello, everybody in the chat. People may not remember, Jeremy, that we had a show together called The Calmness and the Chaos. And you were the chaos, I was the calmness, and that's what got you started on the whole chaotic thing.
There's no question about it. And I think one of the things that were really interesting about that show is I wasn't always the chaos, and you certainly always was not the
That's
calm.
true. Sometimes we did role reversal where it was like I went off the rails and you had to calm me down.
Especially back then when we were still losing, when we thought, oh, it was really exciting with some of the roster additions we made, and I was convinced Zach Wilson was going to throw for 40 touchdowns and 4,500 yards, and when that didn't happen, I was upset at certain basic things that I was wrong about, but you were getting mad at some of those little more intricate things and just what was going on in the field and inside the numbers that would just piss you off, especially some of the play calling, I think, back then from Mike LaFleur.
Yeah, those were the good old days, weren't they? That was the good old days when we had high hopes for, people who really we shouldn't have had high hopes for, like Denzel Mims, for example. Man, that was a tough one. The old Denzel Mims days.
Oh man, the guys that we thought were our stars, it's amazing. Bryce Hall.
Bryce Hall, oh boy. LaMichael P. Ryan,
Yeah.
uh,
It's for our
Jabari
stars.
Zuniga. What about Jabari Zuniga? Remember
Oh
the
my God.
arguments we used to have? He was used wrong. We didn't use him properly. We're gonna unleash him. Oh boy, we didn't unleash anything.
Oh my God. And the only guy that was the guy that I wouldn't have believed out of all of them, the craziest one that didn't pan out, in my opinion, was Becton. If one guy was coming off a year where he really looked like we were going to have a potential all pro, you know, still in a position for the next 10 years. At that time, it really looked like it was going to be Becton.
Well, but also you can't predict injuries and what happened to him. And I think that the Eagles did a smart thing. They moved him to guard. And they said, let him be in here. He's not going to be on an island as much. He's not as much pressure on the knee, for example, because he's got help to his left, help to his right, and he can use that power. He could use his superpower, which is his strength, his play strength, his hand strength, and all that, to great effect. I think that was pretty smart by the Eagles. But at the same time, we couldn't have predicted the devastating knee injuries and what's his name, Van Roten missing his block and getting thrown into
Yep.
and all that. So yeah, just the way it goes. But yeah, I mean, the kid Becton has all the talent in the world, and at least he's on. Unlike Mims, at least he's on somebody's field doing something.
Yeah.
Mims, I think, is going for tryouts at certain. I think he's going to be going to the CFL soon. So
Yeah. I don't know if it's serious, but I did read on Twitter that Becton did get injured today.
oh boy,
I don't know if it's serious, so we'll see. I don't want to say it's anything real or not real.
I hope
but
not. I root for Mackay. I don't see any. I mean, Mackay had some weird things to say. He was a little emotional at times, but overall, I liked Mackay, and I'll always root for Mackay.
Yeah. And Billy comes in and says, "Yeah, for us, he didn't want to play guard. He said I'm a
Yeah.
tackle." We really weren't talking about putting him at left guard. I think when he said I'm a left tackle is when we were talking about putting him at right tackle, and I think
He
that's
did play, but then he did play right tackle. So I mean, he said that, but then he deleted it. I think he's one of these kids. I mean, he's young. All these kids are young, and they say things on social media that's stupid, and then they have to, and then he deleted that one, and then he went and did play right tackle, and he played okay at times.
yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things were said by some of our players that right now look crazy and wild. Elijah Moore, had his little breakdown and had to go home for a week and was so mad we weren't targeting him. And now I check the box scores and he has he had actually a good one game where he actually had 4 receptions for 50 yards. He had a real game for them. But for the most part, he gets 1 or 2 targets a game and puts up 12 to 15 yards a game. And he's just really a WR3, WR4 non-factor in most of the games with the Browns. So he never really panned out. And at the time, he was acting like a guy who thought he'd be getting 100 yards a game if he wasn't stuck with the Jets.
it's another one. That guy is a weird case. I mean, if you're a great route runner, you usually can carve out a significant role for yourself. And that's what he does well. That's his calling card. I mean, you
Yeah.
can understand the Mims thing because, okay, he couldn't run routes and he kept getting stupid pre-snap penalties. Okay, that doesn't work. But if you're a route runner, which Elijah is, you can usually get a pretty big role for yourself. So that one's a little confusing. Now, probably too, their quarterback play has been horrible. I think the Browns might be the one of the most disappointing teams so far. I mean, they got a quarterback who can't play, forgot how to play quarterback, and is getting sued again by another woman,
Yeah.
and might get suspended again. And they guaranteed his entire contract. I mean, and I don't understand how Kevin Barry, that's his name, Andrew Barry, the GM of the Browns, made that decision, and he's going to keep his job. What?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to acquire the guy. You gave up a ton of assets to get him, for one thing. You gave up a ton of draft picks. Those are all players you don't have now. And then on top of that, you guaranteed the whole thing. What?
You'll have people that use Joe Douglas drafting Jeremy Ruckert in the 3rd round as evidence of why he should be fired, even though Ruckert is early in his career. We don't even know he's finally getting his first chance. But you'll have people saying that when there's another GM who, you're right, who guaranteed $240 million to a guy who was accused by 30 women of sexual assault and gave him a contract that was unheard of, a 5-year, whatever, fully guaranteed contract. And
then you have the guy and then you have the guy in Denver who did probably the worst trade of all time, George Payton. And then not only made the worst trade of all time, where he gave up tons of assets to get Russell Wilson, then gave him a contract extension with all kinds of guaranteed money, and without him ever having played it down for them. And then and then it goes wrong. They have to take 2 years worth of $40 million cap hits each year for this contract, and he still has a job. I mean, what?
Yeah. I mean, when people attack, Joe Douglas or whatever for some of the things he's done, and then you look around the league and see what some of these organizations have done and what, how much it's cost them, it really is you just wish people would just get perspective and gain perspective and realize how bad it can be.
Douglas has a pretty good batting average. No GM hits on everything, but if you looked at their batting averages, Douglas is pretty good.
Yeah, I can't complain. I look at the roster. I was naming it before. When you look at the amount of young stars that we have and all the different ways that he gets and brings talent onto the team. I mean, trades, bringing in this guy Simpson, who's just such a key role for us at right guard, right? Filling in such a void was just a brilliant trade. And then getting guys like Quincy Williams off the garbage heap. I mean, and now is all pro linebacker and is so important to the team. And Franklin Myers, we traded him, which I know we're upset about, but just get in the first. Why did we even have him in the first place? Why did we even have Huff in the first place? I mean, these are all people that JG just finds this talent. Now we're looking at guys like McGregor and McKinley and Leonard Marshall III. And we just keep seeing talent come from places where most teams don't see talent come from.
Yeah, and that's got to be a plus for both Joe Douglas and the coaching staff. They find these UDFAs and turn them into something. Even a guy like Gibson, he's a role player who was a UDFA and has a role on our team. Yeah, and these defensive players, we got 3 of them this year, UDFAs, and don't forget Tony Adams was a UDFA as well. And he's a starting safety for us. I mean, that's crazy. So that's a plus for Douglas and a plus for the coaching staff too for developing them.
Right. And then, if he keeps up at this pace, what's happened the first 3 games has continued, Alan Lazard is going to end up being an incredible bargain because the way he's playing and the position he plays, you typically get paid a lot more money than that, right? For what he's done so far on the field.
Yeah, let's hope he doesn't hold out next year. But the guaranteed money for him runs out this year, but we can keep him on for 11 the next 2 years if we want, or we can cut him. So as long as Rodgers is here, let's keep Lazard here for 11 for the role he plays. It's a value. He can make a lot more. Well, let's just hope he likes his 11 million, next year if he has a productive year this year and doesn't pull a Reddick on us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think he would, considering the way the more modest way he came into the league and worked his way from nowhere and was an underdog. And I think he's thrilled to have the money and be getting the money he's getting. And I think he loves A-Rod. And I think he's just here until for as long as A-Rod is here. And as long as, obviously, if he keeps going the way he's going this year, we're certainly not going to part ways with him over $11 million because he's playing such a critical role right now.
It's really, and it really is a value to have a guy who you can play in 11 personnel, but you can run because he blocks and he's like a tight end. Because you bring in 11, they come in with their light personnel. Well, now you can run with him because you can use him like he is a tight end, like you were in 12. That's an incredible value in terms of what you can do and the flexibility it gives you on offense. So, yeah, he plays a big role for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I want to remind everybody in the chat, everybody that's watching, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, and I started and pinned it, so hopefully it's sitting on top of the chat still. If you look, I put the URL of Frankie's site. As everybody knows, Frankie was flying high on his channel and, was super successful and shut down for a couple of years. And now he's back. Unfortunately, YouTube doesn't give you your subscribers back or doesn't give you your channel back. So he's starting over. And I think we get to see him in Green Bean. We get to see him around on other people's channels. So we're taking it for granted. But there's great content I think a lot of people are not seeing. And it's because they simply haven't went back and subscribed to your channel. The Sunday morning show is back and it's as great as ever. The videos after each game that give you the PFF scores are back. And, I don't care if you could look up PFF yourself and find those scores. There's nothing like hearing it from Frankie, the way Frankie breaks it down. So everybody, make sure you go. I don't care if you leave here for a second to do it. Look at that link, click on it, quickly hit the sub button, come back. Make sure we got to just get him back. If you haven't resubbed to his channel, make sure the link is right there. So let's get that taken care of. Let's get Frankie back over 1,000, get him rolling. He was once up, well on his way to 5,000 subs and beyond. So let's get him back on that path. So I just want to say that. I'll say that a few times throughout the show, because I really hope that we get some of you guys sub back to him if you haven't already.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jeremy.
Sure, of course. And it's just really simple. It's the easiest way to pay someone for their effort. It's the easiest way to show appreciation. And I missed it, man. I missed it. I love that no one else gives the information and breaks it down the way you do. Like no one gives the information of and even though I don't always agree with PFF scores, it doesn't matter because it's the way you present it is just trends. You go based on their way of measuring. You could see the trends of who's, and you kind of learn to see it through the eyes of PFF and even if you have 50 different systems, if you look at one system consistently, at least it'll usually reflect the player and, the trend of how they're playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So few things I wanted to ask were, I know that the overall scores, the overall PFF scores, when we're looking at how these players have played so far this year, I'm imagining are still being skewed a little bit by the first game, by the Niners, where everybody basically started with these very low scores. So is there someone the last 2 weeks, like who are the three guys, two or three guys on defense, 2 or 3 guys on offense, based on the last 2 weeks and maybe they even did okay in the first game, but that you're really excited about, that's really coming on strong?
One guy I want to take that I'm encouraged about, that I want to really watch as the season goes on, is Braden McGregor. He did not grade out very well the first 2 games, but he did grade out well against the Patriots. Now, if that guy can turn into something, holy cow. Again, like what if he turns out to be Reddick?
Oh,
it would just be so crazy. So we'll see if it was just a fluky thing, if it was just because the Patriots have a terrible offensive line with a lot of injuries. Could be. So you got to see how it works over time. But that's somebody to keep an eye on. And even a guy like Leonard Taylor III he played for the first time against the Patriots, and he played pretty well. He graded out well, not elite or anything, but for a guy's first game for UDFA to play against, and David Andrews is a real center. Okay, they at least have a real center on that team, amongst all these other guys who are injured and the third stringers. But so, that's something I would want to keep an eye on. The other thing I think on defense is Tony Adams has been consistently grading well. So it may be that we got a little bit of a star in Tony Adams. We got to see him continue to do it. Be nice if he gets some interceptions so that way the normies can kind of celebrate him. But but he's been grading out consistently well this year, and that's really exciting to see. Another guy is his mate, his safety mate, Chuck Clark. First couple of games, no bueno for Chuck Clark. But but this last game he played better, and we expect him to be good. We expect him to make tackles. All we
Yeah.
really need from Chuck Clark is to be a tackler, which is his forte. That's what he's been. Is the first
Right.
couple of games he was missing way too many tackles.
Right.
But maybe that was rust. He is coming back from an ACL, and it takes a while to get reacclimated. So maybe he's just shaking off a little bit of rust, and hopefully he rounds into form because we really need him especially to stop the run. There's a lot of teams that are going to try to run on us, and we need our safety to come up and plug some of the run fits. And so if he's in the hole, like against Tennessee, if he's in the hole and misses the tackle, that's a big problem. Big problem.
And Salah was saying, he alluded to after the first game in his presser, that a lot of the guys were doing too much. And I kind of think, do you think Chuck Clark was one of those guys that he was all hyped up? He missed out last year. He's rusty. Do you think he was trying to do too much?
I didn't see it. I think Salah was. I think he just missed tackles. Like I think Salah was talking about like the defensive line not containing their rush lanes and
Mhm.
going too crazy and going too far upfield and things like that. And so that's what I think he was talking about. For Chuck Clark, I mean, we just need you to hit the hole and make the tackle, buddy. Like it's very simple.
Right.
And also, if you get right there for an interception, like catch it, like that one with Calvin Ridley. Like
Yeah.
you're there, just catch the ball, like it's there, it's waiting for you. Just grab it.
But do you believe, based on, I know New England has their own problems, but the way Chuck Clark played, is it your expectation that that's the real Chuck Clark we're going to get? That he's
I mean,
going
I would
to,
think so. I mean, tackling is not something that's opponent dependent, right?
yeah.
When you're there ready to make a tackle, it's just technique. And so maybe his technique was a little bit off because of the rust and all that. So I'm hoping, and we'll see. Now, he's not really known as a coverage guy. That's not his forte. He can do it, but he's not, Clark, Adams is really the free safety in the traditional sense, although all the safeties these days do both. But in the traditional sense, Adams is more the free and he's more the strong. And to be the strong, you need to be in the box sometimes making tackles. That's what we need him to do. And that's not opponent dependent. I mean, some of it is, I guess, if they got you blocked up and how quickly you can shed their block. But for the most part, he's just going to be hitting holes and he just needs to tackle the guys.
Okay. Now we have a guy by the name of Will McDonald. You know him well. He
Yes.
is tied, or he went into today tied in the NFL with sacks, 5.5. I don't know how they do it, but somehow a half a sack was added at some point, and he ended up, right now they're saying he has 5.5 sacks, tied with Aiden Hutchinson. But PFF
Really?
doesn't give him these outstanding grades, even though at this pace he would break the record for sacks and be one of the most dominating edges ever as far as sacks. What's really going on inside the numbers with him? I mean, like, take away the sacks. Why doesn't PFF like him? What is he doing wrong? Where does he need to grow and improve?
It's just like Bryce Huff when he was on our team, not Bryce Huff on the Eagles, where he is invisible.
Mhm.
It's basically the same problem. He's really good at rushing the passer right now, which is great, and we need that. That's amazing. But he's not great at stopping the run and holding the edge. Now he's not terrible at it either, according to the grades. So he's just sort of average or slightly below average, at holding the edge and playing the run. So that's just the way it is. He's basically like Bryce Huff was for us, although he's going to play a bigger role. Now, the interesting thing is, and some of the things the PFF grades can't take into account. So some of the interesting things that we're doing with him, we are moving him all around the line. Sometimes we're starting him out as a DT, which is interesting. And other times we're using him to spy. So we used him to spy, for example, Will Levis a couple of times. Now,
Mhm.
that is very interesting that you can have someone athletic enough to play defensive end, also move into defensive tackle under, certain conditions, and spy a guy like a Will Levis, and did a good job, at least on the one I remember seeing. So that's a very interesting player. And, a guy who's a spying on someone and then prevents them from, say, running, you don't get really points for that in the grading system. Like,
Mm.
but you're having an outcome on the game because Levis then doesn't take off running, say, and throws the ball away or gets sacked or by somebody else. So there's lots of those things that are just hard to grade. And it's not like baseball. We talked about this morning. There was a quote from Sam Monson that certain things in the PFF grading system are more like baseball, where you have repeatable events that are pretty similar, like a pitch being thrown and a bat. Everybody gets a certain amount of at bats. In football, it's not like that for the most part. It's why there are no competing grading systems, I think, that are commercially available, because it's so hard to do. And football is so context dependent. DVOA is probably the next closest thing. But nonetheless, they can do so with pass rush, and they can't do so with other things. So I think some of the things he does are valuable but not gradable. So
Right, because impossible to know. Will Levis may have had
right.
50, 60 more yards on the grounds that could have changed the outcome of the game, and it didn't happen because McDonald is the kind of athlete that we
Right.
could utilize, and no one will ever know. It's like kind of like when you take extra precautions to not burn your house down, and people make fun of you for being so paranoid, and they'll never know that if you didn't do it, it may have actually, your house may have burned down, and you never get rewarded for saving your house because no one knows it would have happened, because the whole point was you prevented it in the first place. So
That's something well known in risk management, which is my profession, which is that it takes a lot of effort to make sure nothing happens.
Mhm. Yeah.
It takes a lot of effort to make sure nothing happens that day, but no one ever sees it or thinks about it unless something goes wrong.
Yeah, highly, highly unappreciated. Like
Yeah,
they only
exactly.
know when something goes wrong. But for every other day, for years that nothing went wrong, they have no appreciation for the fact that there may have been 20 horrible days if not for the work that you're doing. So
Exactly.
Sean McAteer, what's up? Great friend of the channel. He lives in Temecula. I call him one of the 3 McAteers that defend the land of Temecula and keep that land safe and keep the agriculture there going for the grapes and the wine that they grow there. I don't know how I came up with all that, Frankie, but over the years, you know me, you come up with things. But I want to thank him and remind anybody else that's joined us that he went over. The link is on top. You can't miss it. I locked the link in to Frankie's channel, Frankie from Flatbush, and he went and he subscribed, and we're all about that. We appreciate that, Sean.
Absolutely.
And so let's see. Let's get some comments and see.
Let's pull up Billy. I got a question for Billy.
Right here? Okay.
Yeah, Billy, what is the SBC? Whenever I see this, I think of WNBC, but it's like WSBC. Remember that from the Howard
Yeah,
Stern?
yeah. I think he's like, I'm thinking like, is it some kind of like bank that he works for? Like savings and loans or something?
What's the SBC, Billy? We need to know. It
We know
needs to be revealed.
now we have to know.
Well, here's the problem, Billy, with the trade scenario. Who's going to want him? Why would Arizona want him? Why would anybody want him when he has this attitude? He's a malcontent who apparently doesn't love football, and he's 30 years old now. Today's his birthday. He's now 30 years old.
Yeah.
Who's going to want a 30-year-old malcontent who apparently doesn't love football to the point where he's sitting out? At least he's now sat out 3 games, and he's taken millions and millions of dollars and lit them on fire for no apparent reason.
Yeah.
Who wants that guy in your locker room?
It's amazing people will still defend his stance, and it's like you're literally watching career suicide. You're literally watching someone burn millions of dollars, and there are people watching it that somehow still think he's doing the right thing and that this is good for him. And wouldn't it have been good for him to just show up, play hard, maybe get an extension with us with what he wanted, or just ball out, get 10 plus sacks again, 5 years in a row, and some team that needs an edge is going to come next year and pay you your 25 to 30 million for 3 years or whatever it is for you to finish your career. But what he's done now is, first of all, he hasn't done any, like everybody's got to realize, if he doesn't show up this year, we still own the rights to him for the same contract. So we
It,
still got him for another year. So
it makes no sense to anyone, including the agent, and nobody. The other strange thing is the only person who has come close to having any kind of explanation for this that makes any sense is Josina Anderson. And the reason it's important to pay attention to the reporters in this regard is the reporters are the mouthpiece of the agent.
right.
The agent's not going to come out and say this, but they're going to feed something. So I think all these things that Josina has been saying about this probably are the words of Tory Dandy, his agent. But even that, even those explanations, those long things she's written on X, don't quite make sense. They're basically just mildly, jabbing at Joe Douglas, saying maybe it wasn't such a great idea to come right out and say we're not trading him and he needs to get in here with his teammates. Maybe that wasn't the best approach. Blah blah blah. And okay, that could come from the agent, but number one, that's not really that convincing, and it's not really a great position. And so, what's interesting is Tory Dandy isn't even putting out information for the reporters to put out that makes any sense to anyone. So I don't get it from any point of view.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think she was probably the one that reported, and it probably came from the agent that he's willing to die on his sword. As a little bit of a history buff, a little bit of a little bit knowing about that stuff, dying on your sword, and some of the things that it references to, and I just want to say that's not something to be proud of. Like, for example, in World War II, there's a lot of Japanese soldiers, like in the Battle of Iwo Jima, that were hidden in those caves, that fell on their sword. They killed themselves, okay, because they were lied to and told that the American troops were going to come and torture them and dishonor them and do all these horrible things to them. And the only honorable thing to do was to die. Let me tell you something. All of those, if they would have surrendered, all of them would have went home. They eventually would have went home because it was understood they were forced to be where they were. They weren't kept prisoners the rest of their life. They weren't tortured. Falling on the sword was just throwing their life away. They didn't get to go home to their kids. It's not a smart thing to do. It's a stupid thing to do. So I just need to say that anybody who thinks that there's honor in this, that he's falling on his sword, it's stupid. He worked his whole life to get where he was. Like, he's throwing away his career when he's still in the prime of his career. And he's doing it by refusing to play for a team that has a very good chance to compete this year and do something special. Doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if he was smart, the advice that he should have done, if he wanted to do this, is do a hold in. Pull. I mean, the template was there. Matthew Judon's the template, the most recent one. That's most analogous to him. Look what Judon did. He did a hold in.
Yep.
He went to the facility, but didn't work out. He talked to the people face to face, and then they decided, okay, let's trade him, and they traded him. And he said, okay, I'm going to report to the Falcons and play for them because they don't know me from Adam, just like the Jets don't know Reddick from Adam.
Right.
And he's playing on his contract, and he's going to get a new contract in the offseason.
Yep.
That was the way to do it.
Yep. Right. And they had a verbal agreement from everything I can tell from when it first happened that JD is never like altered from what he said. He said it from the moment we did the trade, that the plan was, and that Reddick agreed to it, his agent agreed, somebody agreed to it, that he was going to come, he was going to show up, and that while he was there, and when they saw him in the locker room, got to know him with the players, they would negotiate. And for some reason, at somewhere along the line, he changed his mind.
Yeah, whether it was the JFM trade or somebody else got a contract that made him angry, that upped the value or something. Something changed because he lied to our faces. He came in, said, "Yep, I'm going to come to all the training camp stuff. Yep, you got it." Lied right to Joe Douglas and Robert Sala's face. So that just tells you this is not a guy that the one criticism you could have from the Joe Douglas side is he should have known in advance this was the type of guy he was dealing with and shouldn't have traded for him. And what he really should have done is upped his offer to Jadeveon Clowney. Clowney came back and gave us a chance to match that offer or better it actually, because he's from South Carolina. But even with Jadeveon Clowney being from South Carolina and having played in college in South Carolina, and the Carolina was going to sign him, he still came back to us and said, "Hey, you want to do a little better than this?" and gave us a chance. and we didn't do it. So you could criticize Joe for that. I think that would have been the move. Give Jadeveon an extra million or two, maybe 3 or 4 in incentives, whatever it may be, and get Jadeveon in here. He wanted to be here. If you remember, the story was that Joe Douglas met with Jadeveon for like an hour in his office,
Uh-huh.
and had a really good meeting with him. There was obviously mutual interest there, and you know that because he gave us a chance to match, or better, really, the offer that he got. And I think if you asked Joe if he had to do it all over again, I think that's the one thing he would have done. He would have signed Jadeveon, not had to make this trade, and we would have been much better off, probably.
Absolutely. So one thing about Clowney, I don't follow him really that strongly. I think from when he was in Seattle, though, I remember that he's more of an all around player too, right? He's a good edge
Oh, yeah.
sealer, like he's good against the run and all that. It's
Yeah,
not
he's
just about
basically the same. He's basically the same as Haason Reddick. I mean, a similar player,
Mhm.
and we would have gotten the most out of him. Of course, we would have brought him here and brought him into the room of monsters and turned him into a mega monster because he has that type of talent. He would have gotten with White Cotton and Albrecht and everybody in there who turns everyone into monsters, and we would have turned him into a mega monster. So that's really what
Mm.
we should have done. Looking back with hindsight being 2020.
Yeah, it's a shame then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but he probably they were just overconfident in in Hassan Reddick keeping his word. I mean, like all Salah could say is high character, such
Yeah,
high
right.
character. Doesn't feel like high character to me.
Yeah, he was a malcontent with Philadelphia. He did the same thing with them. And that was something that we should have looked at a little more carefully. But then he backed down and played for them and played on the contract. So we probably thought the same thing here. We'll give him some sweeteners, and which we were ready to give him 23, don't forget.
Mhm.
So you had 23, and why not take that? Like, that's a good offer.
Right. You're stuck in a contract that you agreed to, that you got paid the first 2 years on, that you were happy to sign, that
Yeah.
didn't guarantee you 15 million. There were incentives put in, and we come in, even though we don't have to, we're saying we'll give you $23 million, which is actually fair because he's not a top shelf guy. He's not Watts. He's not Hutchinson. He's not Nick Bosa. He just isn't. 23 million is right in the range of an excellent stud star player that just isn't like that Hall of Fame elite top 3 player. There's nothing unfair about it. It would have been guaranteed. I don't understand how you could not just take that.
Yeah. And then, you get a fair deal for this year, you ball out and you get paid again. I mean, it's very simple.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how you could. I don't understand why he didn't do that. I just don't.
Yeah. It's kind of mind-boggling. And you know, uh I honestly at one point I really believed that eventually, I think we all did. I think even through camp, well, he'll miss a game and then he's gonna come. At this point, I really just don't know. I know that there's a deadline. There's a game he has to come back by in order to not be stuck with us another year. I thought it was game 10, but maybe I'm wrong. Do you happen to know?
And I haven't heard that one.
Okay, I know that there's a game if he comes back to there's a deadline where if he doesn't come back to the team by a certain week, then his contract like gets postponed the year, like he
Oh,
doesn't become a free agent.
what?
So,
It just gets weirder and weirder
I
and
mean, to
weirder.
me, that's the point of no return, right? I mean, if he actually holds out past that moment, and now we own him next year, and I do not think JD should release him. Like if he doesn't
No.
play, I do not think we should let him go. I think we should say no. You cost us a third round pick. We're not letting you go. And by the way, now you haven't played for a year. Guess what? If you want to play, like there's no negotiating. You're just going to play out the contract the way it was.
Well, or I mean, the off season you might be able to do a trade. I mean, at that point, but then again, it's still the same issues. Why does a team want to take him on?
Right.
And,
Why do I
but
want
some,
to? Yeah. Why do I want to give away draft capital, give away assets for the right to talk to somebody who wants more money than they're worth?
so yeah, I mean, I mean, Tory Dandy maybe has to go to the teams and be like, I don't know, give them some reason why he's not going to be a problem for them, or say, give them a deal on. See, what Tory Dandy could do is he'd say, "I'll give you a deal on this other client I have. You know,
Mhm.
you want this guy, we'll let you get him for a couple mil less if you pay my other guy." I don't know, but that's really just far fetched craziness. I don't really know. The guy should just come in and play. That's just the end of it.
Right, right. Flipping back to the Jets and our first 3 weeks, we talked about the defense. Can you tell me, like, what was the trend of the offensive line? Because I don't remember. I didn't see the scores or much, because I didn't catch your video for that, and I just didn't see it and pay attention to how the offensive line performed PFF wise week 1 against the Niners. I didn't think it definitely was not as bad as the defensive line. I'm pretty confident to that. But what's the trend been for our offensive line? Because I think I saw something in your last video that said that we're like top 10 in the NFL right now as far as our offensive line. Is that true?
Well, you have to look at their individual grades, and probably you'd have to just add up everybody's grades, divide by 5, I guess, to
But
figure out what.
based on Simpson being number 18 out of all the, week 2,
Oh yeah,
and he
yeah.
was our weakest guy, and he was 18. I have a feeling that would having the 5 guys in the top 18 has to put us really high up overall.
Well, that was before the third game, so that was a comparison. So we'll actually see some comparisons after week 4,
Mhm.
because we were the first game of the week this week, so I couldn't. There was we wouldn't do a comparison to week 3
Sure,
because it hadn't happened yet.
sure.
But after week 2, we were looking pretty good. So the overall trend is the interior of the line is looking good.
Yeah,
Tipman, AVT, and Simpson's playing above average, so that's okay.
yeah,
The tackles are a little bit of a concern, in terms of most especially Tyron Smith. Now, I give Tyron Smith a pass for the time being because 3 games in 10 days and he's an older guy. I'm going to give him a pass and say, hey, look, he played the 3 games. Okay. Give him a plus for that. But he didn't play to his normal standards.
mhm,
Um, so he's rated much lower than you would expect for Tyron Smith. We'll have to see if that continues. So far, Olu has also played well and especially done well in limited snaps on run blocking, which is surprising because
yeah,
his forte is pass blocking.
absolutely.
So, but the 3 young guys that we drafted high in the draft are doing the best, and so that's really good. And if you think about it, at some point, if Olu continues to play well, he may take Morgan's job, and then we can go to Morgan and say, Morgan, you're going to be a backup. You're going to be the swing tackle right now. But also, we would like to extend you for a couple of years. We want you here. He's a great team leader, a
Yeah,
great locker room guy. In a reserve role, we could sign him for $6-7 million for 2 years, something cheap like that. And he's our swing tackle. Um, and maybe we do that, and maybe we roll with Olu as the right tackle for the rest of the year. Depends on how he plays, of course. But that could be something that happens, and that'd be great news because then now all of our, the top picks that we spent on these linemen are working out, and that would be nice to see.
also, Tyron Smith might not be here next year, so if Olu moves over to left tackle, Morgan Moses would have a chance to compete to be a starter still at right tackle. So
Yeah,
there's a
that's what
lot
we
of
could. That's what we could pitch it as, and he'd be competing with Carter Warren. I would think we would want Carter Warren to win that job. And if that's if that's our situation, then it's like either Carter Warren wins the job or we go with Morgan, and that's not the worst because I don't think this year's draft we have to get defense. We need defensive linemen, we need defensive tackles, and this is a big defense draft
Mhm.
this year, and so I think we're going to spend our early picks on defense this year.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going to want to spend it on another tackle. So we're going to have to, we're going to have to hope Carter Warren develops, or we just use Morgan, or we sign somebody. But of course, starting tackles are hard to find in the free agency market.
Yeah, yeah. So I think we would all prefer Olu to be the swing and let him continue to develop. But the reality is Moses is out for 2 to 4 weeks, and thank God we have Olu. Suddenly, we're very happy we made that pick. I do think, though, do you think it'll change the philosophy of rushing Morgan back? Do you think, like if Olu's playing really well, does it get the staff to say, hey man, there's no reason to try to rush back in 2. Like, take the extra week, fully heal, and then what if Olu just plays lights out? What if I don't know if he will at right tackle because it's a new position for him. So it's hard to imagine he's going to adjust to the NFL and play at such a high level that we're not going to want Morgan back. But he could definitely play well enough that we could have the luxury of letting Morgan Mosley heal and really be 100% before rushing him back in.
Yeah, I would hope they learn from their mistakes and don't do that anyway. Rushing guys back, they said they made a mistake with what's his name that we got from Seattle that we rushed back.
Oh, Jefferson or the other one?
No, the left tackle.
Oh, the left tackle, the offense.
He had the shoulder injury.
Dwayne Brown.
Yeah, Dwayne Brown.
Yeah.
So they admitted that they rushed Dwayne Brown back, and that was dumb. That was really dumb. Like beyond dumb. Like maybe he might have a grievance against us. Dumb. Number one, you shouldn't do it. Number two, you shouldn't admit you did it. Because if Dwayne Brown really wanted to, he could file a grievance with the NFLPA saying, "Wait a minute, they forced me to play when I was injured." That's like a workers' comp type thing,
right?
So that was beyond stupid. So hopefully they learned from that and they don't do that again, and they just learn to live with, if somebody else gets hurt, Carter Warren, Max Mitchell are here, Cole Laveau is here on the practice squad. We don't want to go to him, but that guy plays Cole Laveau can play all 5 positions. He has in his career. So that's an interesting guy to have for depth. And so we should not rush Morgan back under any circumstances.
Okay. What do you think? What's your expectation against Denver? Now, I know you got an analysis to do because Denver just they just took a big step forward and had a much better game this week. But as far as the players, their defensive line, do you think our offensive line should trend up, continue to trend up? Do you think that do they have a defensive line we should be concerned about? And same thing with our defensive line. Like, where are we in the trenches against Denver?
So I watched the Denver game. Very interesting game. Their offensive line is not great, but the way that Sean Payton is playing it, he's creating a lot of opportunities for Bo Nix to have a high completion percentage with quick game, bubble screens, quick throws. Anytime that Nix has to throw downfield, he gets in trouble. Yeah, because the pressure comes, then he gets happy feet, and it's no good. And now he is an athlete and he will run, so you got to watch out for that. So we should have an advantage against their offensive line. Their defensive line is good. They have Jonathan Cooper and they have JFM and they have a bunch of guys that are pretty decent. They also have Nick Bonito. Like a guy like Nick Bonito is someone who could give Tyron Smith a problem. Because he's that quick. He's basically kind of like Josh Uche, Bryce Huff, those types. So that could be someone to watch. But I'm hoping that Tyron Smith is better in this game than he was against the Patriots, because that was the 3rd game in 10 days. I'm hoping that affected his play negatively so that the next game he's better. But that's someone to watch. So their defense is pretty stout, actually. And I think, it's going to be interesting to see how that team develops. The quarterback it seems like pretty limited, but he can do certain things, and Peyton will get the most out of him. I think he's going to maximize what the kid can do, and they're going to hope to squeak out some wins that way, even though he's not there. There are some limitations with his game.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel, I hear this a lot. I want to know how you're going to react to this. A lot of people are saying we beat Denver the last 2 years. We beat them last year where they had Russell Wilson as quarterback, who, even though he struggled, not as good as he was, he's still a lot better than Bo Nix is right now. And we had Zach Wilson, and now we have Aaron Rodgers. So a lot of people are kind of questioning, and it's kind of weird to look at it that way, because year to year things change, and a game is a game, and how you play that game matters. There's a million things that matter. But the attitude seems to be, how could we possibly beat Denver 2 years in a row with Zach Wilson? How could we go against, Russell Wilson last year? Now we're going against this kid, Bo Nix. How can we possibly lose this game?
We could lose it because Sean Payton's their coach now.
Mm.
and they have a functional quarterback as opposed to Russ Wilson, who, as we all know, is rather limited as well. Now, because Nick's can do what Peyton wants him to do. If you remember, Russell Wilson was on the sideline getting chewed out by Sean Payton. Sean Payton could not stand Russell Wilson. Why is that? Because Sean Payton has an offense that he likes to run in a certain way, and it's complete opposite of what Russell Wilson did in Seattle, which was the Russ Wilson specific offense of running around for 5 minutes and then throwing a bomb to DK Metcalf. No coach really wants to run that offense, including Pete Carroll at the end. That's why there was tension with Pete Carroll and the offensive coaches with Russell Wilson. So now, but Nix, on the other hand, can do the things that Peyton wants to be done. He does get rid of the ball quickly. He does find his receivers very quickly. You do have to make sure you're on your P's and Q's as far as tackling goes, because he wants to play a lot of short game. And if you miss a tackle, then the guy goes and gets a first down. But if you make the tackle, you're in good shape. So it'll be interesting to see how many wins they can get with that kind of a philosophy. But we shouldn't think that we're going to blow out the Broncos. I don't think so at all. It's going to be a chess match between Peyton, basically, and then our defensive coaches. Our offense against their defense, they have a good defense. They think about the players. They have Patrick Surtain's one of the best cornerbacks. They have some decent linebackers. Their D-line is pretty good. But I think Rodgers will probably do well against them anyway, just because he's Rodgers. But the real interesting thing is going to be Sean Payton in that chess match against our defensive coaches.
I wonder if Garrett Wilson is going to have another challenging, difficult week with,
Well, everybody, listen, man, you know what happened? Freaking Bill Belichick. This is what happened on the Manning cast. I don't know if you saw this.
I read about it.
He's on the Manning cast and he is watching the Jet game and he's going, cover Wilson, cover Wilson, cover Wilson, Wilson, Wilson. Like because they asked him, what would you do a game plan against Rodgers and Garrett Wilson? He said, make sure you double Will. And that every defensive coach in the world is watching and listening to every word that man says because he's in the media and they're trying to pick up everything. So now everybody's going to do that. They would do it anyway, probably. But since Bill Belichick said it, now they're going to just double Wilson. And I don't have a personally, I don't have a problem with that as long as the offense functions well. But it's going to be a matter of how much he gets frustrated week after week if he doesn't get his numbers.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the key thing is obviously if they double him, somebody else must win. Like you can't have, if you're in that wide receiver room or the tight end room, you have to understand other players have to understand if they're going to double team him, somebody has got to step up.
And 1 week it was Lazard. He had a big game. This week it was Conklin.
Yeah.
Had a big game. It's going to be whoever they leave open. I think we've seen that Rodgers, unlike some other people, is going to find whoever you leave open, or not leave open, but whoever you pay less attention to.
Right.
He's going to be able to find them and put the ball where it needs to be, generally speaking. So, so I think that's fine as far as our offense generally is concerned. You just hope that Garrett doesn't get frustrated, knowing that he should be. Now, eventually, there should be a game or two where somebody says, okay, we got to play these guys straight up. We can't just double and triple Garrett. We're going to get killed with these other guys. And maybe they decide to do something else. Then again, what that something else is, I don't know. If you look at like Rodgers' PFF numbers in this game, when he was blitzed, he has like a 90 grade. So you say, oh, we're going to blitz him because he's an old man on Achilles. Okay, blitz him. Okay, he's got a 90 grade on. No, we're gonna pressure him without blitzing. Okay, he's got like an 85 grade on that. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, is there a chance Denver, Peyton or whatever the defensive coordinator says, something? We have Patrick Surtain. We don't have to double cover anyone. We're just going to tell him to shut down Garrett Wilson. Do you think there's a chance they try that?
If you have a Pat Surtain, that could be an option. Not every team has a Pat Surtain. They do. So they could try that, and that would be really interesting. Like, that would be mano a mano. Let's see who wins. All right, Garrett, here's your chance. You think you're all that? Let's go. Beat Patrick Surtain, like a drum over and over again, and see if he can do it. That'd be really interesting. They might do that if Vance Joseph is their DC.
Yeah. Now Garrett. I mean, Garrett Wilson goes against Sauce Gardner all the time, and we see in the scrimmages, and the fans are there when they go to the practices. He gets his share. He wins. He gets receptions. It's not like he gets shut down. So he's capable of doing it. One-on-one, he's capable of doing it. It doesn't mean he'll probably be contained. He's not going to go 150 yards, 10 receptions, 2 touchdowns. I mean, we have to be realistic. If you have a cornerback like that on him, you got to be happy with 4 or 5 receptions. Anything over 50 yards, you just take it, and you say, okay, he was able to contribute to the offense. And we really, again, we're going to need Mike Williams, or Conklin, someone's going to have to, or Lazard, someone's going to have to step up. And what's really nice is when you have a guy like Breece Hall, who's so deadly in the passing game as well. So, let them, he could always line up on the outside, and they're going to stick a linebacker on him. They better have a fast linebacker. So,
not every team has a Fred Warner.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, really creates a difficult situation. I was surprised the Jets didn't try it again, but maybe they want to save it for when they really need it. They were in control of the New England game. Maybe they didn't want to give film to every team in the league saying, find the strategy to stop Breece Hall from doing go routes. Maybe you just save it for when you need it. And when he comes over and says, I could beat that guy every time, that's when you save that for. Because it kind of feels like, why don't we just throw him a go route if he's going to have a linebacker covering him?
Yeah, I mean, just spread them out and see what happens. But you kind of need to be in man. They need to be in man, so they could cover that in zone. And then if it's zone, we got to do something else.
Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts about Braylon Allen? I know that the game against Tennessee when he got the touchdowns, I was very excited. But at the end of the day, I still want to know. Because some people, again, it's just that sometimes you could make the argument anybody could have been in that exact position, and it was the play and the scheme, and all he did was do his job, although it looked very good to me. The speed and his acceleration and his decisive decision-making. But what about like his blocking, the route running when he does go out for passes? What's your impressions of Braylon Allen? I mean, is he overhyped, underhyped? We simply just don't have enough data yet.
Look at how the coaching staff used him compared to, say, Corley. Now, it's not exactly the same because Corley has a lot of other people ahead of him. But Braylon Allen came right in and not only earned playing time, not only earned the RB2 job. Not only did he earn playing time, he earned significant playing time, and not only that, he's gotten carries and balls thrown to him, targets, and all that. So that tells you that this coaching staff loves him, whereas Corley, probably needs more time to develop and also has more people in front of him. So, Allen really didn't. There was really a big barrier to Allen being RB2. He just had to come in and be good, and he was. Whereas Corley has all these people. Corley's a wide receiver 5. But the point is that they were not afraid to put Braylon in, and look at how he's handled it. I mean, look at the kid. Braylon Allen is really amazing to me because watch his interviews. He seems like he's 30 years old already or 40. Like he's just a mature kid. This is the youngest player in the NFL, and he's super mature. I mean, I think this kid must have had the greatest parents of all time. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Allen. You raised a wonderful kid, it seems like.
Yeah.
Because this guy is so young, and he just seems like just a mature dude who can handle anything. It's like, NFL, yeah, no problem. Competition, what? You get out of here. So I think it's fantastic, and I think that what has happened is that Hackett said, "Oh, look, I've got Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Only their names are Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Basically, the same thing I had in Green Bay. Now I have it with the Jets. It's basically the same concept. So I can run my pony package. We can do short yardage stuff. We can do all kinds of things with these guys. And he's basically going to do what he did with those two here with these two. And it's fantastic."
One thing I noticed is when we go 11 personnel, we've been moving Garrett Wilson into the slot. Not like I think everybody expected like this. The natural thing was Lazard goes into the slot, but I've noticed Garrett. I don't know how often. Maybe you know better than me, but I noticed him in the slot, and I kind of like it. How do you feel about when we do 11 personnel, moving Garrett into the slot and letting Lazard and Williams handle the X and the Z?
Well, one of the things you got to do with Wilson is make sure he's not on the line of scrimmage, because if he's on the line of scrimmage, it's much more likely he's going to get press man. And he's not great at beating press man. The one thing with Garrett that he can improve over time is his play strength. He's not the strongest guy in the world. So you want a guy like Mike Williams or Lazard to handle that. To allow Garrett to get his clean releases, you want him either as the Z or the slot player. So that's the right thing. You need him to get clean releases, and once he does that, he's deadly with his route running. So that's exactly the way they should be using him, and what I thought they would use him as, because that's the one thing. The one thing you want to do with Garrett is rough him up. Like if I was the defensive coordinator, other than double teaming him, you want to rough him up. And you notice teams have been doing that. They even take some cheap shots on him, which I don't appreciate. Thank you very much. I think we should all be up in arms when they do that.
Absolutely. We got to protect them like we protect our quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But so that's one thing. But another way to quote unquote rough him up is to, legally get him off of his route by hitting him early off the line of scrimmage. That's harder to do when you're in the slot and you're in the Z position. So I think that's expected, and that's the way it should be, and should help him get into his route quicker.
Okay. I want to remind everybody, we got some new people who have joined us in the last 20 minutes or so. One of the things that I want to do, aside from just talk about the Jets and have Frankie here doing it, which I think is just one of the greatest things, greatest ideas I've had for the channel, is having you subscribe to his channel, because you don't have to come here to hear Frankie. You shouldn't have to. You can go and hear Frankie anytime he wants. He has tons of videos you could watch right now that I guarantee you would be entertaining and educational. So make sure, that you go, that it's pinned, the link. Make sure you go, make sure you subscribe. Frankie's back, but unfortunately his channel has to start from scratch. So we got to rebuild the channel, get all the subs up for him. Make sure you go, make sure you sub, make sure you check him out every Sunday morning. Coffee with Frankie?
Coffee with Frankie. You got to have the coffee.
See now. Yeah, coffee with Frankie. Best way to start your Sunday to prepare for Jet games or just football Sunday. And then, of course, his videos are legendary, informative. Always is after the game when you want to know how everybody did within 48 hours of the game. Maybe Frankie can be more detailed. That maybe it's 24 hours. I don't know. But it seems like within 2 days of every game, Frankie comes out with the video that we'll go through and break down all of our players, their PFF grades. He'll do all kinds of comparisons, team comparisons, all kinds of good stuff that you really don't want to miss.
Yeah, it's interesting. PFF now, I think they commit to by noon time the day after the game, they get the grades up. And oftentimes it's even before that. So also on X, I'll put out, as soon as I see that they're up, I'll try to put out, here are the top 5 Jets graded from the last game. As soon as I see them, and then as soon as I get home, I'll do a video showing all of the grades and all of the deep stuff. I mean, there's other things other than grades, like pass blocking efficiency, which is not really subjective. It's like, how many people did you let come close to your quarterback? And if it's 0, you get 100% efficiency. So that's kind of cool. And also some other things like, what's Aaron Rodgers' grade when blitzed? I like looking at things like that, because it's like, okay, what is a defensive coordinator going to do with this guy? You can't blitz him, because you look at the grade, it's like 90. Like, what? Okay, he's elite when we blitz him, or well, maybe we shouldn't blitz him. What is his pressure grade? Well, it's 85. Okay, we can't pressure him. What are you going to do? Drop everybody in coverage and rush 1? Like, what? Let's drop 10 into coverage and see what happens.
Drop everyone in coverage and don't pressure him.
Yeah, just let him stand there. But we got 10 guys covering. All right.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that like the way he's played under pressure. It's great. It's so what we've needed for the past bunch of years. And what's funny is that this might finally be the year where it's the least needed, in the sense that we're going to be able to give him the best protection we've given a quarterback probably in the last 15 years.
And the interesting thing is, we were looking at the tape this morning, as you know, Jeremy, on the Coffee with Frankie show, and we were watching when the protection was not great in that last game. He still has the wheels to get out of the way and get out of trouble. And it looks like he's got plenty of wheels to me. I mean, you look at the tape and, man, he looks like the old Aaron Rodgers running around out there. So that's really exciting, because you're never going to have a game where you don't let pressure. I mean, they're going to win some reps, So sometimes you need the quarterback to make it right, and it seems like he can do that. So that's the good news.
I feel like, when you look at his 2 MVP years in 20 and 21, he has the same offensive coordinator that he feels comfortable with. It's the same dialogue and conversations about what they want to do. He has as good a running backs as he had at Green Bay, if not better. He has receivers of the quality of what he had at Green Bay, and now he has the offensive line that he had, the quality of that he had at Green Bay. Conklin is very well at tight end. I'm sure he's fine with that, and Jeremy Rucker. So it feels to me like there's no reason why we can't expect, if Aaron Rodgers plays like the 2020 Aaron Rodgers or the 2021 Aaron Rodgers, if he's anything close to that Aaron Rodgers, it would make you'd think, based on that talent, it's no longer but this isn't Green Bay. No. We are giving him as much talent as Green Bay gave him over those great years. We could start thinking that maybe we're going to see the results that Green Bay got to enjoy for all those years.
Not only that, but if you watch this guy in the interviews and in all of the media that we do and put out, he seems like he's having a hell of a time here. Seems like he's so happy. He's giving long answers to the media, long, funny answers that and they're cracking up. And it just seems like he really, really loves it here. So the way I see it is, if he keeps playing like this, and if his health holds up, I don't see why he couldn't stay here for another 2, 3, 4 years. Why not? I mean,
Why not?
Why not? I mean, because if you think about it, if he plays 4 years where he's just an average or better quarterback in the NFL, and if he plays like he played against the Patriots, he'll be much better than average. He's going to be at the top of the record books for everything now, and hopefully he wins 1, dare we say 2 Lombardis in that time, and then he'll really be on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks of all time, because there's a lot of records that are within his sights, but he needs, he can't just play 1 more year. He needs like 2, 3, maybe even 4 more years. Some are not in his grasp at all, like the yards. I think Brady has so many yards, there's no way anybody's going to catch him except maybe Mahomes, I guess, if Mahomes plays to 45. But a lot of those records are within his reach. Some of the records, Favre is ahead of him. For example, you think he doesn't want to pass Brett Favre? I think he probably does. So there's some like extra motivations he could have, and he really does seem like he's having a great time. I think the organization loves him, and it seems like the media loves him too. As from what I mean, don't you think the media must love this guy for what the things he says? I mean, some of them were saying on X, like, I've never heard language like the bolero and boondoggle. These are words they've had to look up because they don't even have the vocabulary that our quarterback has.
I think our local media is really enjoying him. I think they love his candidness. They love that he's talking to them. I think that the national media, there are people who hate him because he hasn't played by their rules, and because their rules have been wrong. Like, it's been pretty much, and they're showing who they are. Like Diana Rossini, they're showing that they're bullies. Like, if we don't like you, we're going to go. And they did it. They go after him. They say horrible, untrue things. And when he didn't go to OTAs, she said that's who he is and whatever. And she went all over him and didn't, left out the fact that he went to all voluntaries, and that he missed the 2 mandatory days. But I think our local media loves him. And I think the national media, it's like tough luck. It's like, because I think he's at the point of his life and the maturity and the skill level that they could write whatever they want about him. They could take all these shots at him. They could look to stomp on him or do any of these things. It's not going to matter. It's not going to affect the end result. If he's destined to win a Super Bowl, if he has enough left in the tank and we got the talent around him to make it happen this year or next year, it's not going to happen or not happen based on people like Diana Rossini. And I think he understands that and knows that.
I mean, if he could get 2 more, I mean, Brady, nobody can ever top Brady. Brady has 7. I mean,
it's untouchable.
It's untouchable. Plus all the other, he has 7 plus all the other records that he has, the yards, the touchdown, So it's going to be, I mean, the only one who has a real shot, of course, is Mahomes, I would say.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, like, he needs to, like, in his mind, he probably needs to be above Drew Brees. Brees had a great career, Hall of Famer for sure, has a lot of records, put up a lot of, but only has one ring. And right now, all Aaron has is one ring, and that's a great Hall of Fame career. Don't get me wrong, more than most of us have, but but I'm sure he'd love to get multiple, like 2 or 3, just
I mean, if he was to win one with the Jets, I mean,
yeah,
2, forget about it, definitely, no doubt. But even winning 1, I think that slides him right back into the, like, it definitely puts him to the no argument with the Peyton Manning argument, right? Peyton Manning, they'll say, oh, he won 2 Super Bowls with 2 different teams. So right away, it puts him right there with Peyton, and
right.
there's no argument there. And then, I think you're right. I mean, I don't think Brady is touchable, but I think if he got a 2 with us, I think if we won the Super Bowl and came back and did it again, and we had to beat Mahomes twice to do it, I think he goes right into the number 2 slot behind Brady until Mahomes does something after that magical and maybe passes him, but that's fine. Top 3 in history,
Right.
for the next 20 years until someone else comes along. I could live with that.
And you have to think, like, this is a guy who got passed over a lot. Like, I'm reading the Ian O'Connor book about him, and it's a great book. I would recommend to everybody. The biography that just came out. This is a guy who was not highly recruited. He had to go to community college. He wasn't the biggest and strongest, wasn't highly recruited, had to work his way, and then of course got passed over in the draft, but he did go in the first round eventually. Um, and all of that, and then had to wait behind Favre, and then Favre retired and wanted to come back, and then they were going to go to Rodgers, and then maybe we'll go to Brett, and then the Green Bay Packer fans were like, well, yeah, we want Brett back, and and so he had to deal with all that, and so he's always kind of had a chip on his shoulder. And what's a great way to get rid of that chip on your shoulder but win a couple of championships with the Jetsies? So
Yeah.
I think he's just super motivated to do it, but he just seems like also he's just unburdened. I think he's really happy here. As far as we can tell from what we see, and we see a lot these days, much different than in the previous, years when we were growing up. You never saw these people until they showed up on your TV screen on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, right? Like now we see them all the time. We see them practicing. You see them interviews. They're on podcasts. They're all over the place, and so you can get a real feel for these people. And I think he seems pretty happy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he's really glad to be here. He looks like he's having fun. I think that's why he's going to stay another year, because he's really enjoying himself. And I think that he just wasn't in Green Bay anymore. I think he had alluded to, if you read inside the lines, he went on and he did it in a really long way, but I think he kind of said, nobody's left from the people who brought me into this organization. Like, he said it in he didn't put anybody down or throw stones at anyone. But when you really listen to him talk about it, one of the last times he really talked extensively about Green Bay and leaving Green Bay, there was really the message really was, these aren't the guys who brought me here. These aren't the guys that believed in me. These weren't the guys who developed me. I no longer have any allegiance to the organization. I love the fans. I love Green Bay, but there's no handcuffs on me anymore because there's no one left. I'll have that
You think
same,
about it,
so.
and you think about it, this regime of the Packers, and just so everyone knows, full disclosure, I am an owner of the Green Bay Packers, me and 500,000 other people. So I just full disclosure. But think about the current regime of the Packers. They drafted Jordan Love, and at some point, once they feel comfortable with his development, you got to think they want to see Jordan Love succeed because they picked him. It's like they want to justify their picking him. This is our guy. We picked him to replace Aaron. He's finally ready. It took him a couple of years. In the beginning, he was quite terrible, according to the reports, but he really developed and got to the point where they're okay. Let's go. And they want their guy in there because they picked him. Like, let's justify this pick. Let's get this guy going. And Aaron was standing in the way, sort of. So yeah, but it worked out all around. So far so good. Anyway.
All right. Before we wrap up, I know you already alluded to that you believe that Denver could be a problem and give us some problems, and might be maybe we shouldn't just sit there and expect to roll all over them. What's your and again, you don't have to give the specific score or whatever, but what's your expectations of the game or predictions for the game? Do you think we're going to win, and how hard and how tough and how close do you think it'll be?
We should win. I think it will be it's going to really depend upon. So what we should really do is sit back and zone and tackle people. Because they're, like I said, I watched Nick's today. What he really does is the short game. And if you miss tackles, then they can get first downs. But if you tackle the guy on first contact, they really don't have a very good, at this point in time, long game. And if they do, then you just tip your hat to them. But you got to take that away, make tackles, and have that. And but then if they start gouging us, then we will start blitzing him and lighting him up and stuff like that. I think that's going to be the game. And so we'll see. Their defense is good, but I think Rodgers, after what I saw against the Patriots, I think Rodgers will handle them one way or another. Whatever they're going to give us, he can take it, whatever that may be. So I think we'll win. It probably won't be as easy as some people may think. I don't think there's going to be too many easy weeks. I mean, the Patriots even, like if you look at the Patriots, they had a lot of injuries. Their roster wasn't great in the first place. And then they got hit with a lot of injuries, and one of their offensive tackles left the team. So we're not the only team who has a guy sitting out. Their tackle said, "Nah, I don't want to be here. See you later. Goodbye." Like what? So we're not the only team that happens to. But so that was just an unusual circumstance. They got hit with a ton of injuries. So that was an easy game, but I don't think Denver will be easy, but we'll see. I mean, Sean Payton, we're going to have to have a chess match with Sean Payton now. And then the week after that, we got to have a chess match with Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold. So that's going to be interesting. The thing to think about here is we really can't lose to Denver, because that Viking game is now, which looked like a easy game for us, when we were looking at the calendar, because we thought, okay, it's going to be JJ McCarthy, rookie ups and well, no. Now it's Sam Darnold and it's Kevin O'Connell, and they're blowing people out and they're looking really good. So that's a game we could very easily lose, especially because it's in London. So who knows? We'll be up at 9:30 watching a football game. But that's a game you could lose, because I'm pretty sure Sam Darnold's going to want to tear our hearts out. And he's got Justin Jefferson. He's got all these people. So, and he's got Kevin O'Connell, most importantly. So that's a game we could lose. So therefore we cannot lose to Denver. We cannot happen. No way.
You heard it. I agree. I think it's a must win. I can't see them lose live for a third year in a row. I think I need to see this team win. I'm flying across the country for this for the third year in a row. I need a win. Frankie, thanks for coming on. Everybody, again, I posted the link again a second time. If you have not subscribed, and if you're watching the replay of this, so you can't click on the link in the chat, just go into search and say Frankie from Flatbush, and it will pop up, and there will be a link. And you can easily subscribe to his channel. There's absolutely no excuse. How can you be a Jet fan watching Jets content on YouTube and not be subscribed to Frankie from Flatbush? It's an absolute crime. So, Frankie, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the information that you're providing everybody.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Okay, so make sure you guys subscribe. Thanks for everybody in the chat. Everybody who's going to watch this later, thanks for the support. By the way, if you haven't, you can subscribe to my channel as well. Nobody's asking you not to. Take care, everyone. Be well. Oh, yeah. Go. Amazing. That's my boy. He breaks away from a sack and completes the pass for first down.
Kittle just may have made the most amazing catch.
He fights for the first down and gets out of bounds, too.
It's no good. Overtime. Oh, what a catch. How do you drop that? What are you, Jamal Adams? Touchdown.
This is a touchdown all the way.
He reached over the pylon. San Francisco beat Cincinnati.